Good day, class. Today we're going to be learning about fossils, a lesson in time. The Iowa Core S.3-5 ES.3 understand and apply the knowledge of fossils and evidence they provide of past life on Earth. We will be learning about 5 different types of fossils there are from a broad perspective. What exactly is a fossil? What do you think of when you look at fossils? I think most of us probably think about dinosaurs, but there's a lot more to it. In fact, millions and millions and millions of years more. There were plants and microbacteria, microcytocisms, all before the dinosaurs even existed. This is an example of a fossil. Just by looking at it, can you tell me what it is or how it became this way? Take a good look. As you see this brief outline right in here? What does that look like to you? Possibly layering? I guess we'll just have to learn more. There are 4 ways that a dinosaur or an animal, plant, fish, seashell, what have you, becomes a fossil. First, they die and decompose. Now, what happens when an animal decomposes? What's left behind? Does anybody know? Bones. That's correct. That's what these are. The skeletal bones of the animal in question. Now, when an animal millions and millions of years ago would die and leave behind their skeletal bones, they would stay on the surface of the dirt. As time would go on, sediment, which would be these layers, would start to cover the bones. Wind, rain, mud, grass, dead trees, other dead animals, things like that, would just build up and build up and build up. Now, once the animal was covered in sediment, they would also begin to put on extra layers of sediment, because like I said, this is over millions of years. So there's the other layer. Okay, now we're good and covered with lots of sediment. Now what happens? Movement. Who knows what earthquakes are? Yeah, that's not the only movement the earth has. Anything from water erosion, wind erosion, just basic movements in the crust of the earth that'll shift from time to time, causes these animals to stay even further under the ground and more sediment to build up over them. Now, as I was talking about erosion, that comes up here on the surface and really begins to hide any evidence that there was ever an animal buried under here. Okay? So this is how a fossil becomes buried and lost in time. Now, once an archaeologist, that's someone who digs up fossils, finds one, they have to categorize them into 5 different areas: petrified, molds and casts, carbon, trace fossils, and preserved remains. We're going to briefly go over these 5 types of fossils, and with each one I'll have a picture so you can identify what they look like. Now pay close attention to these pictures. These examples will be useful in the activities that we'll be doing after this lesson. First example is petrified. What does this look like to anyone? A rock? No, it's technically not a rock. Actually, it was a tree first. See the rings? This is a 2 million year old tree. It was buried long in all the sediment that we were talking about. And it began to just build up. And instead of decomposing, it compressed and became hard. So when you find it, it actually feels like a rock. It looks like a rock. Technically, it's not a rock. Another example here is molds and casts. See how this one looks like it's protruding outward like a 3D movie? See that? And how this one looks like it's going inward like a Jell-O mold. Now, if you took this fossil and you folded it in on itself, this one would fit perfectly inside this one. This is a mold and a cast. So this one would be the cast. And this one here is the mold. Think of it this way. If you can pour it in, you're making a mold, just like a Jell-O mold. Okay? This here is an example of a carbon fossil. If you were to feel it with your fingers, it would almost appear to be smooth, as if somebody painted it onto the rock itself. However, it's tiny, tiny bits of carbon left behind by the body. All living organisms are made up of large amounts of carbon. And when you die, the carbon is one thing that doesn't decompose. And so under high pressure and heat, under millions and millions of pounds of dirt and sediment, as the fish begins to, the rest of it begins to decompose, the carbon is left behind, leaving a carbon imprint. And this is exactly what it looks like. Trace fossils. These are some of my favorites. They give us a lot of evidence on where animals were going, what animals were doing, who they were hanging out with, who lived around each other, who interacted with each other. It's very interesting. It's almost like if you were to sit back and watch a movie about a neighborhood. Think about everything that you leave behind. If someone was to come into your house right now, what could they learn about you based on what's in your bedroom? So many things. If you have posters, or the kind of shoes you wear, or the clothes in your closet, or even the pet that you own. Same thing for these guys. Trace fossils are petrified things like footprints. Footprints can tell us exactly what animal was in what area at what time. They also have petrified things like nests and burrows and feathers, and there's things like in the rocks where they can see where, say, like a Tyrannosaurus Rex would sharpen its back claws, or so then we pick up on habits of some of the animals too. I really enjoy these. I think these are fun to really look at. So, I mean, even look at this. What can we learn from this picture? It was a particular type of animal, and he was going in that direction. And it looks like possibly he was in good health. His feet seem to be, fairly regular in size. Like, that's just a lot of different types of evidence from these fossils. Where have you seen this one before? Anyone? Jurassic Park, maybe? This is how they took the DNA, remember? Anyways, preserved remains. This basically talks about animals that were preserved in a substance that encapsulated them and kept them from actually decomposing. As you see, even the wings are still intact. The main body of this entire, I'm going to say, we'll just call it a mayfly. If you get into this piece of amber or sap or whatever it is, everything about this animal will still be there, maybe in a little drier form, but it will still be fully intact. And it gives us a ton of information on things like size and color and their capabilities. It also gives us evidence into like DNA, so we can look at their blood and look at illnesses that were running around at the time, and very, very interesting. So what were the 5 types that we went over today? All right, in our conclusion, we're going to go over everything we just learned. A fossil is preserved remains of a living organism, the 4 ways to decompose, and the types, the 5 types of fossils. Now, we're going to have an assignment after this where we're going to get online, and I'm going to have you research 2 pictures of each type of fossil. Now, I want you to document what the name of the organism is, where the fossil was found in the picture, how long ago it was, how old the fossil is, and then title it with what type it was as well. So, after going through all this, you should have a nice, bold understanding of the 5 types and the 4 ways that animals decompose and become fossils. All right. Have a nice day and enjoy your assignment.